The peaceful Valtorian race had long lived in harmony, far from the conflicts that scarred many other planets. But peace was shattered when the Exatheran Empire, a ruthless and violent force, kidnapped their beloved princess. The Exatherans demanded an enormous ransom, knowing the Valtorians would be unable to meet their demands. Desperate and powerless, the Valtorians sent a plea for help to Earth, a planet they knew little about. They expected only rejection or vague promises of aid, yet what they received shocked them. Earth sent not an army, but a single warrior. The Valtorians were baffled. They had expected Earth to send fleets of ships, advanced weapons, or entire divisions of soldiers. Instead, Earth's response was simple: a man named Captain Jack Turner. With his military record, Jack was known as a soldier who could survive impossible situations, but he was just one person. The Valtorians had doubts. They thought it would take an entire army to challenge the Exatheran forces, but Earth's message was clear: one man is enough. Captain Jack arrived on Valtor with nothing more than his uniform and a small bag of supplies. The Valtorians looked at him skeptically. He was tall and lean, not particularly imposing when compared to the powerful and heavily armed Exatheran warriors. But his eyes told a different story. There was a quiet strength in his gaze, a certainty that came from years of facing overwhelming odds. Jack didn't waste time with explanations. He went straight to work. He spent days studying the Exatheran fortress, learning every entrance and exit, every guard post, and every patrol route. The Valtorians watched in awe as he analyzed everything with calm precision, showing no fear. This was not the reckless bravado they had expected, but a calculated and methodical approach. When the time came, Captain Jack didn't storm the fortress with guns blazing. Instead, he infiltrated it alone. The Exrans had underestimated him, thinking that a lone human would be no threat to their heavily guarded citadel. Jack moved through the shadows, silent as a whisper, slipping past the first layer of security. He used his wits to bypass alarms and avoid traps that were designed to catch even the most skilled of invaders. Each step he took was deliberate, each action carefully planned. When he did face resistance, it wasn't brute force that won the day, it was strategy and skill. In one narrow hallway, Jack faced two Exatheran guards. They were twice his size and heavily armed, but he didn't flinch. Using a combination of stealth and quick thinking, he used the environment to his advantage. He tricked the guards into thinking they were surrounded, causing them to hesitate long enough for him to disable them without firing a shot. They were left unconscious in the shadows, none the wiser. Jack's most challenging obstacle was the Exatheran general who held the princess captive. The general was known for his brutal strength and viciousness, and he had been ordered to prevent any rescue attempts at all costs. But Jack's ability to read people and understand their weaknesses was unmatched. He used a clever distraction, exploiting the general's overconfidence, and in a one-on-one encounter, he outmaneuvered the Exatheran leader. With a swift, precise strike, Jack freed the princess, keeping her safe despite the danger all around them. With the princess in tow, Captain Jack didn't simply escape. He knew the Exatherans would be relentless in their pursuit, so he relied on more than just stealth. He used the Valtorians' own technology to confuse their pursuers, hacking into their security systems to block their path and sabotage their communication. It was a race against time, but Jack's preparation paid off. The Exatherans couldn't track them, and Jack led the princess back to safety. When they finally emerged from the fortress, the princess was free, and the Exatherans were left in chaos. Captain Jack returned to Earth with the princess, leaving the galaxy stunned. The Exatherans had assumed that a single human would be no match for their empire, but Jack had shown them how wrong they were. He hadn't just saved the princess, he had exposed the flaws in their arrogance. The Valtorians, now in awe of Jack's skill and bravery, saw humanity in a new light. Earth was not just a small, insignificant planet. It was a place where courage, intelligence, and determination could turn the tide of any battle. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. Earth had proven that a single warrior, armed with nothing but resolve and resourcefulness, could take on the might of an empire. And that was a lesson the Exatherans would never forget. The Valtorian Empire was known for its peace and prosperity. Their princess, a symbol of their civilization, had been kidnapped by the Exathran Empire, a ruthless force known for its conquest of weaker planets. The Exathrans demanded an unimaginable ransom, and when the Valtorians couldn't meet their demands, they feared the worst. They were helpless, unable to confront the Exathran forces head-on.I. In their desperation, the Valtorians sent a message to Earth, a distant planet they knew little about. They had heard of Earth's warriors, but they didn't know how much help one planet could provide. What they got in response was far beyond what they could have expected, a single human warrior. Sergeant Lucy Green. The Valtorians were skeptical. They had seen the power of the Exathrans' massive war fleets, devastating weapons, and unrelenting aggression. How could a single human woman, who they knew almost nothing about, possibly defeat such a force? Earth had a reputation for sending aid, but this was different. The Valtorians believed they needed an army, not a single soldier. But Lucy Green was no ordinary soldier. A quiet and thoughtful strategist, Lucy had earned her reputation for solving problems that seemed unsolvable. She wasn't the kind of person who rushed into battle with reckless force. She believed in using her mind to win, not just her strength. And when she accepted the mission, she did so with one goal in mind: to rescue the princess, no matter what it took. Lucy arrived on Valtor with only a small team of engineers and tech experts, tasked with providing her the tools she would need for the mission. Armed with her military training and a brilliant mind for strategy, Lucy began studying the Exathran forces, learning everything she could about their tactics and weaknesses. She knew she was facing the impossible, but she wasn't afraid. She had faced overwhelming odds before. This mission wouldn't be about sheer force. It would be about outsmarting the Exathrans, exploiting their arrogance and overconfidence. And so, she prepared. The day came for Lucy to infiltrate the Exathran stronghold. She wasn't going in guns blazing. She had no interest in fighting the Exathrans head-on. Instead, she used stealth and cunning. Slipping into the heart of their fortress unnoticed. As Lucy made her way through the corridors, she studied the guards' patrol patterns, the security systems, and the layout of the fortress. Every step she took was calculated, every movement precise. She knew that the Exathrans would never expect someone to sneak into their stronghold without a full assault. Lucy quickly discovered the Exathrans' greatest flaw: their arrogance. They had grown complacent, believing no one could penetrate their defenses. They had made the mistake of thinking their empire was invincible, that their military might was unchallenged. But Lucy was about to prove them wrong. Using their overconfidence to her advantage, Lucy disabled key parts of the security system. She triggered false alarms in one section of the fortress to draw attention away from her position, and when the Exathran guards responded, she slipped past them unnoticed. She found the princess's cell, guarded by two of the strongest Exathran warriors. But Lucy was ready. With quick thinking and precise moves, Lucy disarmed the guards, using their own weapons against them. She freed the princess, then led her out of the fortress, all while evading Exathran soldiers at every turn. She didn't need to overpower them, she just needed to outsmart them. After a long and tense escape, Lucy and the princess finally made it back to Valtor. The Exathrans were left in confusion and chaos, unable to understand how a single human had defeated their most secure stronghold. The Valtorians, who had doubted Lucy's abilities at first, now looked at her in awe. Sergeant Lucy Green wasn't just a hero. She had proven that humans could win without sheer numbers or overwhelming force. Through intelligence, strategy, and determination, she had outsmarted the most ruthless empire in the galaxy. The Exathrans were humiliated, their arrogance shattered. They had thought themselves untouchable, but they had underestimated Earth and its people. The Valtorians, once skeptical of humanity, now saw them as a powerful ally. They had witnessed firsthand what humans were capable of, not just brute force, but the ability to think, to adapt, and to overcome any challenge. Lucy's return to Earth was celebrated as a triumph of intelligence and courage over violence and power. The galaxy learned a valuable lesson. Humanity might not always rely on force, but when they need to, they can overcome anything. Earth had shown that it was not just a planet to be ignored, it was a force to be reckoned with. The peaceful Valtorian Empire had always been a beacon of harmony and wisdom in the galaxy. They had never known war, and their princess was loved by all. But everything changed when the Exathran Empire, a brutal and powerful force, kidnapped the Valtorian princess. The Exathrans had no mercy, and their message was clear: unless the Valtorians surrendered, they would lose everything. With their hands tied and no military might to rely on, the Valtorians sent out a desperate plea for help. They turned to Earth, a distant planet they had heard little about, but one that was rumored to have warriors capable of extraordinary feats. Their message was simple: help us rescue our princess. We have no other choice. The Valtorians waited anxiously for a response. Days passed, and doubt began to settle in. Then, a small fleet arrived from Earth. The Valtorians expected a large army, but what they got was unexpected: only one soldier, a man named Derek Scott. Derek was no stranger to impossible missions. An ordinary soldier with a reputation for defying the odds, he had taken on missions that others thought were certain failures. The Valtorians, however, were skeptical. The Exathran Empire was a ruthless force, and they couldn't understand how one human could stand a chance against such an overwhelming enemy. But Derek wasn't afraid. He knew what was at stake, and he understood that brute force wouldn't win this battle. He had fought in enough wars to know that intelligence and strategy were often more powerful than sheer numbers. He assured the Valtorians that he would succeed, even if it meant doing the impossible. Equipped with nothing but his combat skills, his quick thinking, and a few tools, Derek set out on his mission to infiltrate the Exathran fortress, where the princess was being held captive. His goal was clear: rescue the princess and return to Earth with her, without a single shot being fired. The Exathran fortress was an imposing structure, heavily guarded and surrounded by traps. Derek knew that brute force would get him nowhere. He couldn't afford to make any noise or attract attention. Instead, he relied on his knowledge of tactics and his ability to think on his feet. Derek began by studying the patterns of the Exathran guards. Every empire has weaknesses, and he knew that the Exathrans' pride and arrogance would be their downfall. He found small ways to disrupt their systems, overloading sensors to create diversions, cutting power to parts of the fortress to confuse the enemy, and using the shadows to stay out of sight. As he sneaked deeper into the fortress, Derek took down Exathran warriors one by one. He didn't kill them. Instead, he used their own weapons against them, disarming them with quick strikes and outsmarting them at every turn. His training in hand-to-hand combat allowed him to incapacitate enemies without raising alarms. Eventually, Derek reached the princess's cell. It was guarded by two of the most elite Exathran soldiers, known for their strength and skill. Derek wasn't intimidated. He used his knowledge of their tactics to predict their movements and, with surprising speed, knocked them out one by one. The princess was stunned when she saw Derek, a human, standing before her. She had been taught to expect heroes in shining armor, but what she saw was a calm and determined warrior who had come to rescue her. With the princess safe, Derek didn't waste any time. He led her through the labyrinthine corridors of the fortress, staying one step ahead of the Exathran forces. His strategy had been flawless so far, and he knew he couldn't afford to make a mistake now. The journey back to Earth wasn't easy. The Exathrans, realizing they had been infiltrated, scrambled to hunt Derek and the princess down. But Derek's cunning kept them one step ahead, and after days of evasion, he successfully returned to the Valtorian fleet with the princess in tow. The Valtorians were amazed. They had expected a great battle, but instead they had witnessed something even more extraordinary. Derek had shown them that victory didn't always require armies. One human, armed with intelligence and strategy, had done what an entire fleet could not. The Exathrans were left confused and humiliated, their fortress compromised and their elite soldiers defeated by a single human. As Derek returned to Earth, he left a galaxy-wide message in his wake: never underestimate humanity. The Exathran Empire had learned the hard way that humans were more than capable of overcoming even the most overwhelming odds. The Valtorians, once skeptical, now saw humanity in a new light. They recognized the strength and determination of the human spirit. Derek Scott wasn't just a soldier, he was a hero. His mission had been impossible, but he had proven that anything was possible for someone who was willing to fight with their mind and their heart. Earth's reputation had grown, and the Valtorians would forever remember the Earth warrior who saved their princess. The Valtorian Empire had always been peaceful, known for their wisdom and calm leadership. Their princess, a symbol of hope and unity, was loved throughout the galaxy. But that peace was shattered when the Exathran Empire, ruthless and power-hungry, kidnapped the princess. The Exathrans demanded that the Valtorians surrender, threatening to use the princess as a bargaining chip in their conquest of the galaxy. The Valtorians were desperate. They had no army, no way to fight back against the mighty Exathran forces. With their backs against the wall, they sent a plea to Earth, a planet they had heard little about. They knew Earth was distant, but they had also heard rumors of incredible warriors, people capable of doing the impossible. The message was simple: we need your help. Please save our princess. The Valtorians waited with bated breath for a response. Days passed, and doubt began to creep in. Just as all hope seemed lost, Earth replied, but not in the way anyone expected. The response came not with a fleet of ships or an army of soldiers, but with a single individual, John Blake. John was a man with a reputation, a soldier who had faced impossible missions and come out victorious. His past was filled with tales of surviving battles that others couldn't even dream of. He was no general, no mighty leader, but a man whose skills had been honed through years of brutal combat and survival against overwhelming odds. The Valtorians were doubtful. How could one man, even one as skilled as John, stand a chance against the might of the Exathran Empire? But they had no other choice. The princess's life was at stake, and so they placed their trust in this lone human warrior. John arrived on Valtoria, not with arrogance, but with determination. He knew the Exathrans were dangerous, but he also knew that overconfidence could be a greater enemy than any army. He didn't plan on brute force. He would use his mind, his skills, and his willpower to succeed where armies had failed. The Exathran stronghold was a fortress unlike any other. Heavily guarded and filled with traps, it was a place where even the most skilled soldiers would falter. But John was no ordinary soldier. His training had taught him not to rely solely on force, but on tactics, stealth, and precision. John infiltrated the fortress under the cover of darkness, using his keen instincts to avoid detection. He knew the Exathrans would underestimate him, and he used that to his advantage. Sneaking past guards and disabling security systems, he worked his way deeper into the heart of the fortress. When he finally reached the princess's cell, he found her guarded by elite Exathran warriors. They were massive, strong, and armed to the teeth. But John had a plan. He used his environment to his advantage, setting traps and luring the Exathrans into positions where their strength was useless. With quick thinking and precise movements, he incapacitated them one by one, never firing a shot, never raising an alarm. The princess was stunned when she saw John. She had expected a grand rescue, an army to storm the gates, but instead she saw a lone warrior who had outsmarted the enemy at every turn. John told her to stay quiet and follow him, and together they made their way through the fortress, evading patrols and outwitting the Exathrans at every corner. As they reached the exit, the Exathrans realized something was wrong. They sent soldiers to stop them, but John was always a step ahead. He led the princess to safety, his mission a success. Against all odds, he had accomplished what no one thought was possible. He had rescued the princess from the heart of enemy territory. John returned to Earth with the princess, having completed what seemed like an impossible mission. The Valtorians were amazed. They had sent for help, hoping for a miracle, and had received something even more incredible, a single human warrior who had defied all expectations. The Exathran Empire, stunned by the success of John's mission, retreated. They had underestimated humanity, thinking that they could easily crush a small, seemingly insignificant planet. But they now knew that Earth's warriors were unlike anything they had ever encountered. The Exathrans realized that a single human could accomplish what entire armies could not. The reputation of Earth grew across the galaxy as the Exathrans were forced to retreat in disgrace. The Valtorians, once hesitant to trust Earth, now saw humanity in a new light. They had proven that one human could do what entire empires couldn't. From that day forward, Earth was no longer seen as a small, insignificant planet. It was recognized as a powerful ally, a force to be reckoned with in the galaxy. John Blake, the single warrior who had defied an empire, returned to Earth as a hero. His mission had been impossible, but he had shown the galaxy that sometimes all it takes is one person to change the course of history.